Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all.
I was just going to say, you know what one of my favorite shows is?
I'm going to say the same thing. How are we the same?
I don't know.
Okay, I was literally sitting over here looking at your face. I'm like, how do we kick this thing off today? And then I just immediately thought of a show I wanted to tell you about.
Oh, well, I was going to say mine. So let's
I
each
want to
share.
hear yours. I want to hear yours first.
Well, I was going to say one of my favorite shows, it's done now. Well, they're coming out with a second one, but it's Dexter.
Oh, I freaking love Dexter so much. I struggled with the most recent iteration of Dexter, but I think I didn't give it enough time.
Is that the new one with a new character?
Mhm.
I haven't watched that one yet.
When he's living like away, like it's snowy something, like he's out in
Oh,
the
that
wilderness.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we finished that.
Is it worth finishing?
Um, I would say so because I don't like leaving shows that I really like unfinished. I
Mm-hmm.
will say I didn't love the very last episode,
Okay.
but you start to see where he unravels in his mastery of serial killing.
Well, and how it might be hard to be a parent as a serial killer?
That's it.
Yeah.
So you start to see him unravel because he's in this new role and he genuinely cares for his son.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I probably will watch it. I'm watching Missing You, Harlan Coben.
Okay.
This man, I called him Harlan Corbin forever because you know me in names.
Yeah.
Not the best. But he writes these amazing mysteries and then Netflix typically picks them up. And sometimes it's Polish or Spanish or whatever. But his latest English one is Missing You. And
Mm.
it is a wild ride. Garrett and I watched the whole thing last night, every episode.
Wow.
Well, we had to see. It was like every episode ended in a way that we did not see coming.
Okay.
So it's pretty bonkers. So you have to check that one out.
What does it stream on?
Netflix.
Oh,
I
okay.
know you have that one. I
I
should
have
give you
that
my
one.
login to all the other ones. I
I
just
know.
went in. Okay, my brain had subscribed to every combination of things.
Right.
So Garrett and I are budgeting because I went nuts at Christmas, which you know because we've talked about it.
Hmm.
And he made a list of everything we're subscribing to. I was like, oh my gosh, like Disney Plus on its own, Disney Plus in a bundle. I'm gonna save us like probably $50 a month on just straight streaming.
Oh, that's great.
I know. So I did that yesterday. That felt great. But it's so interesting you bring up Dexter because the case that I have for you today is a
Hmm.
little bit of a female Dexter.
Is it the one that our detectives told us about?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. I
I
wanted to
know.
look this up. I just haven't yet.
I'm so glad you didn't because I have like some details and interesting discussion point. It is and isn't like Dexter. So we'll talk about some of the similarities and differences, but it is a female offender.
Well, and this one, similar to the one I just did a couple weeks ago,
Uh-huh.
is local in the Springs,
That's right. This is a
right?
local one. And those are fun ones for us to do because we can get more information. So I have
Yeah.
like local articles that
Yeah.
I could pull from. And I have done work and you have done work in the 4th Judicial District, which is down here
Hmm.
in Colorado Springs. And so it was interesting. Even I recognized the judge's name who presided over this case, which is very interesting.
Oh, that's fun.
Okay. So Deka Simmons was 38 years old when all of this went down. And basically, what happened was a local man went missing,
Hmm.
and his name is Daximo Seha.
Okay.
Yep, Daximo Seha. So he went missing. He had an active warrant at the time of his death for failing to register as a sex offender. He was not required to register in California, where the offense took place. Basically, he had a relationship with a 17-year-old girl when he was 25.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this man kind of goes missing. they're trying to figure out who was involved in his killing because what they did find was evidence of blood in a garage.
Mm.
Okay. So 2 months after Daximo was killed, SWAT officers bust in and they arrest 38-year-old Deka Simmons.
Okay.
They had linked her to the murder through DNA from blood in the garage. And also, there was a text message from her to someone else talking about, like, we better clean the garage or you better be cleaning the garage. So there was a
Oh
little bit of
gosh.
like a connection to where this happened. I still don't know how they ended up in the garage together. I looked and looked and looked, but I couldn't find a narrative because I don't think she's been cooperative either.
What do you mean? So whose garage were they in?
I'm pretty certain they were in his garage, but it doesn't
Okay.
even say explicitly where that happened. So I'm going to have to try to find that, but I wasn't able to find that, which is
And did she have like an accomplice who was cleaning the garage?
they just found messages on her phone, but I don't know who they were connected to.
Weird. Okay.
It's weird. It's so weird.
Because you'd think they would get charged for accessory.
Well, you certainly would, but I
Right.
didn't see that. You could Google. You might Google better than my Googling.
Okay, you keep talking.
Yeah, I'll keep talking. Okay, she gets arrested by the SWAT team because she
Okay.
was linked to the murder through DNA that was found from some of the blood in the garage. So they
Okay.
cleaned the garage, but they didn't clean the garage well enough. And whatever garage they were in linked them to him. That's how they knew something happened to him.
Okay.
Okay. She was charged with first degree murder and held. She was held basically without bail. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But the investigation took 2 years because there was nothing connecting these two. Not one thing.
She was arrested in 22?
Yes, the murder was in 22. She was sentenced this year. So the investigation leading to the trial, she was not sentenced until August of this year. It's been a 2-year process. The reason it has taken so long is because there was nothing to connect these two humans.
Right. Because it's not a friend, which is interesting. Like that's
Yes,
I hate to say it this way, but like if you're gonna commit a crime, you don't want to do it to someone that you know.
100%. And the way that they found her, her DNA was on file because she has an extensive criminal history that I'm going to get into.
Oh, okay.
So her DNA is in the system, fingerprints are in the system, all the things.
She's the whole thing. Okay.
She's a whole thing. So you might be thinking, vigilante, maybe there's some connection, maybe he hurt somebody she knew. But
Hmm.
no, he just was a sex offender in California who in Colorado Springs had not yet registered, and there was a warrant out for his arrest for failing to register as a sex offender.
How did she find that out?
This is my whole question.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I don't give benefit of the doubt to sex offenders very often, but
Mm-mm.
he was not required to register in California. So it's possible that he didn't have his ducks in a row in Colorado,
Mm.
right? Hard to
Hmm.
imagine a little bit, but if
Hmm.
he wasn't registered in California, he may not have had somebody like bird dogging his move to Colorado the
Right.
way that they would in Colorado if you're on the registry.
Right.
And this is one of those places, and Nat and I run into this all the time where every state's different.
Hmm.
So somebody
Hmm.
moves to a new state, and it is very clunky to move an offender state to state.
Hmm.
Even a sex offender, it is really clunky. The systems are different. The charges sometimes are different, the consequences, the treatment requirements. And so I don't know why he didn't register, but there was a warrant at the time for failing to register. Have no idea how she knew that,
Yeah, that's
except
wild.
that you can look up warrants.
You can?
Oh, you can look up warrants. You know I have. You
Is
can
it
look up
free?
an active warrant. It is free to look up an active warrant in
I know
certain
you,
jurisdictions.
I know you have to pay to get someone's background.
Mm-mm. You can search warrants.
Wow, okay.
You can. The weird thing is, though,
Well, search if you're dating someone new, search if they have warrants.
show you have a warrant. Check it every day.
Yes.
I check. There are people that I check every day to see what's happening with them because
Mhm.
I know there's something weird going on. The interesting thing about this is you typically have to have a name to search. So it's still
Mm,
a little weird to me unless she found something online, some way just to see like a list of active warrants,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or a sex offender specific. Like it could be that the sex offender website for Colorado, which is pretty robust, might
Hmm.
have listed people presumed to be in the area who have not registered or failed to register. That's possible. Okay. They find her DNA. She gets arrested 2 months after she kills Daximo Seha. She shot him.
Okay.
She I should not laugh, but it's just a little bit. January is turning into the month of the female killers. It just
Yeah, it is.
and you know what? I'm with it. I think we just keep going with this trend.
I love it.
She dismembered him, put him in a bag, and dumped him in a culvert in my old stomping grounds. Like this is a part of town that I'm real familiar with.
In the spring. So it was, was
Uh-huh.
it Northern Springs?
It's off of Fillmore and 25. So
Okay.
it's on the other side of Fillmore and I-25.
But is that Northern or Southern?
Kind of mid. It's kind of
Okay.
mid. It's not on the north end, but
So I lived in South.
it's north of downtown. Not south in the Broadmoor. It's
Okay.
north of there. Yeah.
Okay.
Guess when they found the body?
What, like a year later, like 6 months later?
Yes. So she gets arrested. The murder happens February 16th, 2022. She gets arrested April 7th, 2022. So like 2 months later.
Hmm.
They don't find the body until October 5th, 2023.
Mm. Wow.
I know. So over a year later. And Colorado Springs police got an anonymous tip that there were human remains found in a bag near the 500 block of Polk Street east of I-25 in Fillmore. So
Oh my
that's where he was found. Okay.
God. Okay.
But it's an anonymous tip. It's not like a hiker. You don't hike there anyway. It's right by the highway. But
Right.
it's not like somebody went for a walk and found this. It was an anonymous tip. Also weird. Okay. I know.
That's so weird.
Your face. I know.
And like clicked. I'm like, yeah, anonymous tip, whatever. And then I'm like, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. That's a weird way to find a body.
No one,
What the
yeah, it's
heck?
not like they're like, oh, I found these body parts. It's, hey, I know about these body parts and I'm not telling you who I am.
In Colorado, it's almost always a hike of some sort. You're hiking, you're
Right.
walking outdoors, boom, a body.
And you're like, shit.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's how we find people.
Mhm.
It's the Colorado equivalent of like a dark alley, right?
Right.
You're on a hiking trail and bam, there's a human, right?
Yep.
I want to tell you a little bit of her history before I tell you exactly how her sentencing went and everything. So I told you she was 38 at the time of the murder.
Hmm.
Her criminal history is nuts. And we are on the CBI all the time looking at background checks.
Hmm.
This woman, I mean, this is like a 35-page background check. I didn't even run it because I don't need to because I have all the info from local publications.
Hmm.
But this would be the longest one we've ever seen.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not going to give a million details because it would take us 4 hours, but I'm just going to give you some highlights.
Okay.
So you have a picture of Deka. Okay.
Okay.
At 18, Deka Simmons was charged with murder and felony assault with a deadly weapon, but those charges were ultimately dismissed.
Okay.
This was the first of more than 7 weapons related allegations before the
Mm.
murder. So from 18 to 38, 20 years, 7 weapons related allegations. Less than 3 months after Homegirl gets picked up for a possible murder,
Hmm.
she was accused of being involved in the shooting death of Donna Oliveto, a former fellow inmate in the El Paso County Jail.
She shot her?
Yep. Well, she was accused of being involved in the shooting death. Simmons and her then boyfriend, Jeff Hoskins, were at the residence with Oliveto when Simmons became paranoid that Oliveto was working for the police. Simmons stole Oliveto's white Pontiac Grand Am after her murder. Haskins was the one that pulled the trigger, So
Mm,
Simmons was eventually charged as an accessory in that homicide and
okay.
served 12 years in prison.
Dang.
Olivetto's mother
So
called,
she did that when she was like, what, like 22?
she was 18.
Oh my gosh.
She was 18. So this chick, accused of being involved in a murder at 18, less than 3 months later, she gets accused again. This one sticks. And she was an accessory. Yeah. So because Haskins pulled the trigger, she only got the 12 years.
Right.
But Olivetto's mother called Simmons the mastermind. Is just
For
convinced. This was like
sure.
her cellmate in prison. Like this was
She
a
was
fellow inmate,
probably just pissed about something.
100%. Right. And maybe a little paranoia. Then I start thinking drugs, even though there's not a lot of mention of drugs in her history. Paranoia. She was feeling pretty paranoid and she had just gotten in trouble. So I think there might have been a little bit of like, who's watching me? What's happening? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So she got released from her 14-year sentence. Okay.
Okay.
Normally people get out early. Wouldn't you say typically people get let out a little bit early, good behavior, parole, whatever.
Yeah, it depends what they did, but yeah.
Her 14 years turned into 16 years when they were forced to release her because that was the mandatory amount of time.
But she like added time on.
Oh, yeah. 35 documented incidents in the Department of Corrections, including fighting, assault, and verbal abuse. So like she was up to her eyeballs in bullshit in prison.
Oh my gosh.
So they kept her as long as they physically could, and then there's statutory limitations
Right.
on how long you can hold someone. So 16 was the maximum, and she was released.
Oh my goodness.
That's 2016. Here's this 18-year-old. She's now, okay, what's 18 plus 16? 34.
Okay.
And has had all of this mess, okay? And she gets spit out of prison. 16 years mandatory release. What are you thinking?
I mean, sociopath, like, does not care, doesn't care about her life, therefore doesn't care about anyone else's.
Mm-mm. Clearly a violation of the rights of others over and over and over again.
Yes. But doesn't like even cannot think through, like, I don't want to stay in prison. Like, that
Yeah.
doesn't matter to her.
Mm-mm. And impulsive.
Yeah.
Very impulsive. And when you take someone that young, we're going to talk more about this in a minute, but you start to get kind of institutionalized. I mean, she
Mhm.
was raised until 18 out of the system, but then she was in the system for the next 16 years.
Mm,
So when she got out of prison, she had spent almost half of her life in prison,
mm.
right? Okay, 2017. So she gets out in 2016.
Okay.
2017, her parole officer, shout out parole officer, went to her motel room. She's got brass knuckles and knives.
Oh my gosh.
I know. This is the thing. This is the thing. We have a couple real antisocial folks at any
Uh-huh.
given time in our program, right?
Yeah.
More than a few of them have been in trouble for having weapons when they're not allowed to have them. Previous offender, having weapons, that's a violation. It's a huge issue.
Hmm.
A lot of times they say, well, it's not a problem until it is. Like, I got my brass knuckles, I got my knives, I got my gun, I got my whatever
Right.
in case I need it. It's not a problem unless you happen to go in my hotel room.
Right.
And they bank a lot on that parole officer not coming and searching that hotel room,
Right.
right? Or home or whatever.
Hmm.
She got a 2-year sentence for that. So she gets out, she goes back in. Now she has been largely incarcerated for 18 years. Okay. They let
Okay.
her out on parole
Okay.
in 2019. She gets imprisoned again for stabbing her stepfather after an argument over custody of her child. They're at a liquor store, of course, because this is very Jerry Springer. What's happening over here?
When
Just your
did she
little,
have time to have a kid?
oh, she's got a kid. And I need to double check the age of her child because I don't remember exactly what the age of her child is. Her child's not mentioned in a lot of this because she was gone,
Okay.
like all of it. And she may have even had a baby in prison. Like I'm not seeing enough time or
Yeah.
before the age of 18. She might have had
Yeah.
a baby before the age of 18. So, stabbed her stepfather. She was sentenced to 90 days in prison with 3 years in probation, right? On probation.
Okay.
So she's on probation. She gets 2 new cases in Weld and Lincoln County. So now she's getting around. Now she's county shopping, right? Which we see this too. Possession of a firearm by previous offender, 3rd-degree assault causing reckless injury and child abuse. And that was in September of 2020.
Okay.
Several of the charges were dismissed due to a plea deal. She was given 180 days of jail time, but she got credit for time served because they kept her while they were managing all of these charges. And so then she gets out.
Dang.
One of the articles that I read was a really well-written article. Maybe we'll share it on social media.
Okay.
She was never in compliance. Her probation was re-granted on 2 occasions after she was arrested in connection with 2 different crimes. And she posted bail just days before her arrest for the suspicion of the 1st-degree murder. This one where she killed Dexter.
Yeah.
She had just gotten out on bond the day before they arrested her. So some of this crap she was pulling was between the murder and when they arrested her 2 months later.
And
so she
Daxmo
murders
was the
this
offender.
guy. Doximo was the sex offender.
Yep. The
right?
offender. Okay.
So she kills him, gets arrested 2 months later. In those 2 months between her murder of Doximo and when she was actually arrested, she was arrested on 2 whole different crimes.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that just insane?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like she has zero care for her own life, so she's not going to care for anything else.
Yep. The day after she accepted a plea deal in Lincoln County and was released from jail, she killed Daximo. So not only did she get in trouble between killing him and when she was arrested, she killed him the day after she got out of jail in the first place.
Yeah. I just am like, I want to know how she found this dude.
I know, I have ideas about that, but she has been in jail more than she's been out.
Oh, 100%.
And it's not like one incident. Like you think about the Menendez brothers. Here's this massive murder and they're boop, there they go.
Right.
They're incarcerated. This chick was in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. Long stints, short stints, overnights. I mean, she just has done every combination of time practically that you can do in 3 different counties.
Which is crazy.
No, it's nuts. And especially in a female offender, we don't see this quite as often. Hearing all of this, okay, the murder, but then this gigantic criminal history, what do you think is going on with her? I have a list of a few suspicions I have, but I really want to know what you're thinking. Let's say she's done all this stuff and she gets out on parole, which she's not now because of the murder situation, which I'll get to.
Yeah.
But let's say even, okay, we're in jail. I've done jail evals before. You've done a jail eval, haven't you? Okay. Let's say we're the evaluator in jail and we come in to give our opinions on what kind of treatment she needs on the inside or whatever.
Yeah.
What is your conceptualization of her at this point? Like, how do you suspect she got here? What's the diagnosis? What do we do with her?
Send her back to jail.
Well, she's already in jail. We're literally sitting on those janky metal chairs talking to her.
Keep her there.
That's all it says. You just type that in the middle of the page and like
keep her in jail.
Keep her here.
I'm not even going to fill out the rest of this eval. She's antisocial personality disorder.
Yes.
Obviously, high levels of psychopathy.
Yep.
I do think she probably had some sort of, what's that diagnosis when when antisocial individuals are kids, they have a behavioral
oppositional and then conduct.
Yes.
I'm sure.
I'm sure she had one of those.
It's sealed, but I'm sure that she has a juvenile history.
Oh, she has to with this.
I can't imagine she just shot out of the cannon at 18 like that.
Yeah, no.
We'll be right back.
Eye-Opening Moments Podcast are real-life stories of adversity, encounters, and perspectives. They are moments that can lift your spirits, give you some food for thought, or move you. For the introspective mind that likes to reflect, discover, and find solutions or meaning in a complex life, listen to Eye-Opening Moments podcasts.
Well, and I mean, I looked at her picture and, like, it doesn't look like she's had a really easy life.
Well, no, and I suspect we know for certain antisocial peers. The thing that's interesting is chicken or the egg. Like, I'm sure she had some antisocial peers in her adolescence,
Yeah.
but then she was institutionalized for so long that she's living with a former cellmate, a former inmate. So now the only people she knows are in the system.
Which is who was murdered?
Yeah.
And she lived with her?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize she lived with her.
Yes.
Outside of jail, she did?
Olivetto, Donna Olivetto,
Yeah,
former fellow inmate.
but did she live with her outside of jail or?
I don't know if they lived together, but they were in the same residence. And I think they were living together, but at a minimum, they were in the residence.
When they were not in jail?
Yeah, not in jail.
That's why I was thinking when you kept saying like whatever residence, I was thinking like, okay, yeah, they were in jail together because her boyfriend pulled the trigger, but she was the mastermind.
Oh, yeah. No, she was out.
Oh,
She was out
okay.
because remember, she gets touched by an angel at 18 and doesn't go to jail for that murder and felony assault that she was kind of associated with.
Right.
So she gets a pass somehow. Maybe she really wasn't involved, or maybe they didn't have enough evidence, or maybe they had enough other people and she was 18 and they gave her a chance. Who knows? But less than 3 months later, that was when she was involved in that shooting death. She had met Donna Olivetto when she was an inmate at El Paso County for the other issue when she was 18.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
how she met him. And then she
Okay.
lived with him with the boyfriend, which then I'm thinking parasitic lifestyle. Like my brain starts getting all up on the psychopathy
Yeah.
at that point because
Yeah.
that's wild. But also all of her peers are antisocial. Her whole life is antisocial.
100%.
You know?
Yes. That's
It's
what
kind
I'm
of like
saying.
Sons of Anarchy. It's like where every single person is involved in something bad.
Yep.
That's where she is.
Yep.
I don't know though if she had any gang involvement or anything like that, but her world is antisocial.
People like that, it's so crazy. Like you and I have interesting jobs, but like if we worked at a place like a gas station or a grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
somewhere where you just see anyone and everyone, like you just would not want to be on the bad side of someone like this.
Mm-mm. No.
Especially if she's going after people she doesn't really know.
Well, and then you get into power and control.
Yeah.
Was she the mastermind? Hell yeah. I don't know how old that dude was, but it is not hard for me to imagine that she was the mastermind of whatever happened with the boyfriend and the former inmate, right?
100%.
So definitely antisocial. I suspect trauma exposure. One of the things I didn't tell you is it came out in court that she has a quote, unrestrained hatred of sex offenders. And she was incredibly afraid that her daughter would be trafficked. And remember when there was this
Interesting.
thing in 2020? This is the dumbest thing ever, but it was a real thing.
Yeah.
During 2020, remember how furniture got really expensive because the supply chain and everything got crazy?
Yes.
Do you remember the conspiracy about Wayfair being involved in
Yes. With
children?
human trafficking. Yep.
They're like, that's not a wardrobe, that's a child. That's a
Yes.
$1,000 piece of furniture, that's a child. They're buying
Yes.
a child, right?
Yes.
So there was a lot of fear, especially around the time the pandemic hit around trafficking. It's not wrong. You and I have gone to trainings around trafficking. It's a very
Yeah.
real thing.
Yeah.
But this was something she was terrified of. And one of the reasons she stabbed her stepfather is she said she had fear that he might abuse her daughter, but it didn't say explicitly that she'd been abused by her stepfather.
Okay.
But I suspect she may have been abused growing up.
Well, and that's what I was gonna say is I bet you no human, let alone woman, ends up like this who hasn't had a significant amount of trauma and
Yeah.
abuse.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And if they do, it's like super rare. Every
Yeah.
serial killer, every human that you and I've done research on when it comes to that kind of stuff, they've all had trauma.
Yeah, there's usually something.
Mhm.
Sometimes it is literally the brain's just different. I
Mhm.
have not come across that clinically, though. Now, I
Mm,
have met psychopathic individuals who try to cash in on a trauma history they're not connected to.
correct.
That's interesting when that
That
happens,
is interesting. Yep.
because I'm sitting here feeling traumatized as they're relaying their story, but they don't have an emotional connection to it, which is
Yep.
fascinating. We talked about criminogenic needs in past episodes. This is something we've talked about. The
Mhm.
reason antisocial peers is at the top of that list is this.
Mhm.
It's this very thing: antisocial attitudes, antisocial behaviors, antisocial mindset.
Mhm.
If she's released, she will do all these same things again.
Yep.
Her whole life is built around this. Her whole development has involved this.
Yep.
So, what she was finally sentenced to, so her sentencing happened this year in
Okay.
August.
Okay.
So, she was ultimately charged with first-degree murder, violent crime with a weapon, violent crime cause of death, and tampering with a deceased human body.
Okay.
Her sentencing, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole and an additional 24 years for tampering with a deceased body and
Mm.
3 more years for tampering with physical evidence. So she is never, ever, ever getting out of prison. Never.
Yeah, I'd imagine not.
And she shouldn't.
Mm-mm.
But I do wonder what might have happened if somebody had been able to get a hold of her at 18, because she was already involved in some big girl bad stuff.
Mhm.
I worked with a female who had really antisocial peers one time, and we got pretty tight up in Aurora.
Mhm.
And she came to me when she was 18. I worked with her until she was 21. And we did manage to put some boundaries with her lifestyle. Entire family was gang affiliated. She was raising a child in that environment, super challenging. But she would come in and actually talk about her environment. It took 6 months for her
Mhm.
to actually tell me that her family was gang affiliated, because that's just a
Mhm.
big no-no,
Yeah, no.
right? We really, really, really worked on getting her some resources, but she was young enough
Mm.
that she could extricate, and ultimately she moved. That was part of her thing. But she was super non-compliant with probation. So probation really worked with me, with her,
Mm.
to give her some opportunities. What we see here is when that doesn't go well,
Mhm.
like, where do you draw that line
Right.
between helping them and trying to alter the course of this? Or are we enabling them to stay in the community and potentially
Harm
cause
others.
harm?
I feel like when you have the training that like you
Mhm.
and I have, and we're always brushing up. We played around for a while of getting our doctorate.
Oh, yeah.
I still play around with it in my head. So it's like,
That may happen someday. We'll go be desk buddies at grad school at some
dude,
point.
I'm so down. I've thought about it so much.
Mm-hmm.
We just got to get through baby first.
Yeah, let's get through baby.
Let's get through baby. Let's get through this year and we'll figure it out. I feel like because you and I've worked with, and you just shared a case, right? But
Yeah.
there was something in you that probably knew that this girl was workable. You
Yes.
and I have worked with people who are not workable.
Yes.
And I think when you are specifically doing work with individuals who are on parole or probation,
Yes.
you need to have, how do I say this? You need to have that discernment of when it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Right. And to some degree, I think some of that is like just natural gifting and some of that's training. Right.
Yeah. And our own work, wouldn't you say? Because if I
Yeah.
have a savior complex,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to really screw this up.
And we're screwed with that.
Yes.
Like if you have a savior complex,
You're done.
one, you're going to teach them skills that they're going to use in a really harmful way.
Probably against you first. They're going to take your car. You're done. Like, your goose is
Well,
cut.
but they're gonna BS you, right? Like
They're
you
going
and
to
I
BS you.
hang our hat on. We are not going to teach individuals who are higher on the psychopathy spectrum empathy. Like that's just dumb,
No, we're not going to do that. Well, and that was
right?
my next question is what do you do?
Right. So, I mean, I think for someone like that, you try to see, and this is why I keep coming back and saying the same thing around like she doesn't care about her own life. She just genuinely doesn't care about her own life.
Mm,
She doesn't. Because if she did,
right.
I've worked with enough people who've done really terrible things, but do not want to live in prison.
Yes.
So, things like MRT and, different types of modalities that are more CBT based.
Yeah.
That's like A plus B will equal C, or we do A plus B and we get a different C,
Yeah. Let's change it
right?
to B.
And the
Yeah.
this C will benefit you more.
Yes.
It's not about benefiting others. It's not about, following the rules because that's morally good. It's about if you follow the rules, you won't keep going to jail. You won't keep spending money in the court system. It's
Mm,
circling it back to how does this benefit you? But for someone like that, if she genuinely just doesn't care,
yeah.
right? Like incarceration is the best thing.
I just love what you're saying, Nat, because you know this in some ways better than I do because you did have done so much work with MRT.
Mhm.
And I don't understand MRT fully. I'm not trained in it. And so I really value the way that you look at these cases and you've been so helpful to me when I get stuck with somebody because I'm such a facilitator
Mhm.
and I can get in there with a little bit of warmth and a little this and that,
Mhm.
but sometimes they're just straight up antisocial.
Yeah.
And I had a guy tell me a couple of weeks ago, and he would not mind me sharing this, I promise, because
Well, and we're not going to share identifying in it.
we're not going to give any identifying information,
No.
but it was such a hilarious and good conversation about how much they hate MRT. He
Yes.
hates it, hates it, hates it, hates it.
Yes.
And also, I asked him, I said, why are you doing so much better now than you were before?
Because of
It
MRT.
was MRT. The number one thing was basic needs.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't able to get consistent food and shelter, right?
Yep.
That was number one. So once we handled that, MRT. He's
Well,
like, as much as I hate it, I actually think it's really helping me. I'm like, well,
but
yeah,
and that's the thing, right? And that's why MRT I have a love for MRT. I always say that it drives me nuts. The reason it drives me nuts is because I tend to be the most hated therapist when I do it.
it's so true.
I just am.
It's true.
I was in that group for I know who you're talking about. I know whatever. I was in that group for like what, 4 freaking weeks and I
Oh,
was
yeah.
the most hated
Oh,
therapist.
they hate you universally. It's true.
I know. And so I got out of it because I was like, I am damaging my rapport with my clients where I'm not this type of therapist to them in their other group.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So,
Yes.
but I love MRT. Like when I was running it myself at my old job and I did specifically DVMRT,
Yeah.
I mean, there were less people who hated me because of how I ran it there.
Yes.
Because I was super consistent and I played by the rules with everybody.
Yes.
Everyone had to
Everybody
follow the
gets
same
treated the
rule.
same. Yeah.
Everyone gets treated the same. I'm warm. I'm not like cold,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
I don't just say,
No.
well, you failed. It's really quick.
Yeah. Tell them what MRT is because we haven't really shared what it looks like.
Yeah. So MRT is a curriculum-based treatment, and it is for individuals of a couple of sorts. So for individuals who are higher on the psychopathy spectrum
Mm-hmm.
and who have antisocial behaviors and tendencies and all that. And
Mm-hmm.
also for individuals who genuinely just have a hard time getting themselves organized
Yes.
and like following the rules because they try to find shortcuts, not necessarily because they just want to break the law or break the rules, but because they want to find a way to do it quicker.
Yes.
And so then they end up doing something that isn't helpful,
And
right?
then they have no distress tolerance. So if they don't
Correct.
do it right and you won't give them what they want, they lose it.
Correct. If it doesn't work out.
Yeah.
So MRT does this thing, and everyone hates me at the beginning. Well, this was
Mm-hmm.
when everyone would hate me at the beginning, but I
Yeah.
would tell them, I'd say, just give it 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not a fun process, but by the end of this, you will be able to slow down more. And if you do something wrong, this is what I would always tell my groups. I'd say if you do something wrong in MRT and then you have to take the time to go back and fix it,
Yes.
you do it better. That's the same thing in the real world. We don't just
Yeah.
get instant gratification. And when we do try to get instant gratification, that's when we're trying to control factors that are outside of our control. That's when I assault a UPS driver because they didn't deliver my package because it needed a signature, right? Like that's when I
Yes.
do stupid stuff because my needs did not get met in that exact moment.
Yes.
So MRT is cool because it's a curriculum-based book and it's like, for lack of better words, it's a pass-fail. So if someone brings me, there's what we call steps or modules. It depends on which one you do,
Right.
DV or regular MRT, but we'll say steps.
Mm-hmm.
So they bring their first step completed, right, to their second group. And if they don't follow the rules exactly how it's said in the book or with how the instructor said the rules are, then they have to go take it. They do not pass that week. They have to fix it during that week and bring it back for the next week. And you cannot move ahead. If you move ahead, then you have to erase everything and then start over. Start where you left off, I guess. So it's frustrating because everyone wants to get through it super quick. They want to do all the things, right? But they can't. And so it actually helps their brain slow down and they follow these steps. Does that make sense?
Yes, and many of them didn't do it in school. So there's a
No.
little bit of school trauma for some of these folks because they see
Yes.
a book and they're like, I didn't do well in school. And
Right.
there's a million reasons for that. Sometimes it's mental health, but
Right.
sometimes it is literally they couldn't follow the rules then and they can't follow the rules now.
Exactly. And so part of it is one of the big things I love about MRT. Sorry, now I'm on an MRT kick.
I
One of the
know.
things that I
Right.
love about MRT is it helps, like later on in the book, it helps them break down goals. This is when everyone gets super pissed off. This is that person you're just talking about. That's
It's
why
the
you hated
one.
me.
This is the one that makes them mad.
Yes. So they talk about goals. A SMART goal, right? If
Mhm.
you look up the acronym SMART goal, you guys will figure it out. So it has to be specific, measurable, all of that, attainable.
Yes.
I can't have a measurable, attainable goal if it's not sorry, it is not a measurable or I shouldn't say attainable, but it's not a measurable goal for me to be like, well, I want to be married in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's not a measurable goal. There's a lot of factors that are outside of my control
Yeah.
would say that I might not be married in 2 years.
Even I want to be nicer is not a plan.
It's not a plan. So what I could say is, so in
Yeah.
1 year, I want to be back in the dating scene. Okay. And I'm actually using examples that these guys use. Y'all, I'm married. I love my husband. I'm pregnant, this whole thing.
Right,
But
right.
I'm using like a low-hanging fruit example.
Yeah, yeah. A common one we would see.
Exactly. So they usually say, I want to be married by this time. And it's like, you can't,
Mm-mm.
that's not a goal.
Mm-mm.
That's a hope. Like you can hope for that. But a
Right.
goal is, okay, I want to be back in the dating world in a year. Okay. That you can actually measure. You can actually take steps to get back into the dating world. You sign up for apps now, right? They make it a lot easier. You
Right.
put yourself out there more, right? You sign yourself up for hiking groups, whatever. But there's things that you can do to get there.
Right.
So what it helps a lot of these individuals do is line up these things. So for someone like her, if she was a little less antisocial,
Yeah.
she might say, well, my goal is I want to get out of the system.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. What is step one?
Yeah.
Right? So it helps, like this program helps people break it down.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a really long
No,
explanation.
I actually really love that, Nat, because we've mentioned MRT. It's
Mhm.
even been in our blooper reel. MRT, right?
Yes.
But this is who needs a curriculum like that. That is
Yeah.
exactly what someone in this situation needs, desperately needs.
But you have to, with any type of treatment, I would argue,
Yes.
you have to have some level of care for your own life.
Yes.
She has none.
I don't think she does. And you
She
know
has
what's
none.
interesting? And this, if I had a quarter for every time you and I've had this conversation with a parent
Mm-hmm.
who is in the system,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot protect your child if you are not there.
Mhm.
So many of our clients will say, well, I need a gun in my home to protect my family. I need a gun in my home to protect my children. But then the
Mhm.
gun being in the home, if you're a previous offender, puts you in prison for 10 years,
Yes.
who's going to protect your wife and your child then?
Right.
They're sitting duck in an apocalyptic. We have lots of apocalyptic conversations because that's what a lot of our guys say. Well, listen, when the zombies come, and I'm like, hey, man, when the zombies come, you're going to be in prison. That's not going to be a fun place to be.
Yeah.
I watched The Walking Dead. You don't want to be in the prison, you know?
No.
So I think this trick of kind of slowing them down and trying to help them find something. I
Mhm.
actually think even with Deka,
Mhm.
if she'd had the right treatment as an adolescent,
Early enough. Yep.
early enough, catch her even in high school when she's starting
Yep.
to get real topsy-turvy,
Yep.
and you really orient her to life with her child
Mhm.
and protecting her child. That is a value that did matter to her.
Mhm.
We can work with that all day.
Mhm.
Now, when we talk about the system, this is the heart piece, right? When
Mhm.
we talk about the system, it's so easy to criticize the system, and Lord knows we do it. I mean, I criticize the system all the time. And
Mhm.
if you guys met the probation officers that we work with, it would immediately slow your roll on being pissed at the system because there are a lot of wonderful people
Mhm.
genuinely trying to help. And
Yep.
we've been working with some of these folks for 10, 11, 12 years.
Mhm.
They are, by and large, pretty great people with massive caseloads. Okay.
Yeah.
And they also have to function with the judges and the
Mhm.
public defenders and the DA's office. And they have all of these pieces that they're trying to figure out too. So we
Mhm.
can say, hey, we're kicking this person out of treatment. They're not responding well. We need to set a hard boundary. They're out on their ass, which we do with some
Right.
frequency when we need to.
Yeah.
Well, probation's going to look at that and go, I need to have a really strong case, or the judge is just going to revoke and reinstate them on probation. If I
Mhm.
send them to a new treatment facility, they've just learned how to perform a little better in treatment. But have
Yeah.
they actually made some change? So they'll typically send them back to us, which I support. But
Yep.
then we as treatment have to come up with a whole new plan because what we were
Yeah.
doing before isn't working. A responsible treatment provider will come up with a new plan. They don't all do
Yep.
that, right? But
Yep.
Nat and I do.
Yep.
Nat and I go back to the drawing board.
Yep.
We missed something. We got to figure something out, right?
Mhm.
There are times when we're just in a deadlock
Mm.
and it's really hard to navigate these things. And so if you're a provider, my encouragement is don't shut up about the things that you see. Like, don't ever just say they're a lost cause and refuse to have the conversations. You have to have
Mm.
the conversations.
Mhm.
And my staff sometimes gives me crap because I am more likely to continue to work with somebody than to be
Mhm.
done with them. But part of that is I know the alternative.
Mhm.
I'm not keeping the community safer just because they're bugging the shit out of me and I don't want to work with them anymore. If I
Right.
kick them out and then they go to a new facility where maybe they've learned what to say, or maybe
Mhm.
they go to a new facility and that person doesn't get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and look at a case file like I do.
Mhm.
I'm willing to bring them back because I'm so passionate about the work and trying to get the treatment plan right.
Yes, and doing what we need to in order to help
Yes.
them be successful.
The other thing that's interesting from a provider level, I think providers are competitive still in this space sometimes, even though there's no reason to be. There's more clients than there are providers. This is not,
Right.
but we need to collaborate because sometimes they do need to go somewhere else.
Yep.
And the best thing I can do is send them with good information for the next
Yes.
provider.
Well, and the crappy thing is if we're feeling like we are competing,
Yes,
right? We might not take what the other provider is saying in a space that's going to be actually really beneficial.
absolutely. So my feeling, and I don't know what you think about this, Nat, I wish that we had better treatment for younger people.
Hmm.
And I wish that we were a little bit more aggressive with habitual offenders in terms of incarceration,
Oh, for sure. I agree with that.
you know? And
Yeah.
it got all goofed up with the war on drugs and all the insanity. I'm not going to take you through a whole history of the
Mm-mm.
legal system, but we have work to do
Yeah.
with the criminal justice system. But if you're a provider or if someone you love is in the system, or if your kid's acting a fool in high school and you're starting to panic, there
Mhm.
are solutions for these things, but you have to really do your research. And
Mhm.
again, we need brave therapists. I think so many therapists are like, your feelings are hurt. You need a boundary. And it's like, whoa, your thinking is so messed up. Like, let's take a step
Mhm.
back, take a breath.
Mhm.
We're going to get to boundaries, but let's talk about you first.
Right.
We have to do that. And Nat and I have gotten into some pretty, this is typically me, have
Yeah.
gotten into some pretty intense arguments with other
Mhm.
providers when they're enabling someone who's making the community unsafe.
Right.
We're not here for that. So if your kid is acting up, don't just take them to any therapist.
No.
Take them to a therapist that has experience working with troubled youth
Yes.
and that has some experience with the criminal justice system because they might
Yeah.
just steer your kid right out of it.
Right. Yep. If you
Right?
take them to the wrong therapist or to someone who's going to have an approach that might not be specifically helping them understand themselves and how to get out of what they're doing. So, for example, like maybe an overly empathetic
Mm-hmm.
model of therapy at
Yes.
first is
Yes.
not going to always be the most beneficial.
No, you want a therapist that is kind to you, smiles, and gives you the hairy eyeball a little bit right from the beginning. That's really
Yes,
what I think.
and says, "You know what? I want to help you
Yes,
because I don't want you to end up in these places that you're heading."
exactly.
Right? Someone who's going to help you see, "Hey, this is what's coming if we don't figure this out."
Yes.
Right? But we can't sit with someone like Deka and say, "Well, how did that feel?"
Yeah.
That's just not going to work. And
Well,
that wouldn't have worked for her as a teen either.
no. And if we talk about our German friend, Marianne, from
Mhm.
last week,
Mhm.
she really felt like she was doing the Lord's work that day. I mean, she just took him right off the face of the earth,
Literally.
right? Okay.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. It's very German. There's a lot happening there we already talked about.
Yes,
This
and
is,
kid involved. I get that.
yeah, this is not that.
No, this is not that.
This is not
Okay.
that.
I was going to tell you too. I don't know if you're going to get here, so I'm sorry if you are.
No, do it.
She killed Daximo
Mm-hmm.
because she literally said because he had sex with a 17-year-old girl when he was 25.
Yep, that was the offense. Daximo, that was what the offense was in California. And he hadn't registered here yet. No subsequent offenses were noted that I saw.
No, I know.
I
I was
know.
trying to find if there was if he had like
Mm-mm.
assaulted like younger women or anything like that. And I'm not saying that that's okay. Okay.
No.
But here's the thing. So she's 17, and I get it. She's under 18. She's not an adult.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to bat for this at all. I need to make that really clear.
Technically, though, I actually think that would be consensual in Colorado.
It would be consensual in Colorado. It's an 8-year age difference. I know married couples who I adore who are at 10
Yes,
plus years marriage difference.
100%.
Obviously, they were over the age of 18 when they met, but I'm sitting here. I saw that. I was like, okay, so 17-year-old girl and a 25-year-old. Yeah, that's not great because she's still
Yeah,
under 18, but in Colorado, that wouldn't have been,
it's
I don't
legal.
think that would have been illegal unless she said he raped me.
If it was non-consensual. If it was
Ex-
consensual, the age of consent in Colorado is 17.
Yes.
And there aren't the same age gap rules. So if you're 15 or 16, the
Mhm.
partner has to be less than 10 years older.
Yes.
So in theory, a 15-year-old can actually consent to sexual activity with somebody who's 22.
Right.
Not someone who's 25, but someone
Yeah.
who's 22.
Yeah, but this girl was 17. He was 25. Because I'm sitting here and
know.
I'm like, okay, so like she's like, this vigilante of, she's like the female version of Dexter. That she got this like whole
Ooh, she thought she was doing something really good.
and I'm sitting here and then I see the offense and I'm like, homegirl might have consented. And here in Colorado, that's legal.
Well, yeah. And I wonder if that's why he didn't have to register in California. Now, I don't know.
He might have not had to register here. He might have just had to go get it figured out.
That's what I was thinking in the beginning. I was like, I wonder
Yeah.
if he just needed to get his ducks in a row He missed a court date. He did a something, whatever.
Oh, homegirl just wanted to kill someone.
I think she needed an outlet.
Yes.
I think she needed an outlet. And I think I do not have enough information to speculate on whether or not she's fully psychopathic. But it does sound to me, she for sure is antisocial. We've got plenty of information for
100%.
that. But when we talk about psychopathy, did she just need an outlet for rage from trauma, from exposure, from things that she'd been through, and she just didn't have an appropriate outlet? Was she just wired different from jump and then lived out of that and didn't have the right resources and then got institutionalized and all of that? She's behaving like someone who doesn't care if she's incarcerated or not and may actually prefer incarceration.
Yeah.
And she showed no emotion in court. That was one of the things I read. There was no emotion. So it's not like, I'm going to miss my daughter. Please be lenient, blah, blah, blah. No, it was just no emotion. Like nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
I know.
It sounds like she could have been, another potential serial killer in the making.
I think she killed other people. I have
Yeah,
a very
probably.
strong, okay, first of all, this was not a crime of passion. They were not having an altercation. Killed him, dismembered him,
Yeah, that's
and got rid of
wild.
him in a bag in a culvert, and they didn't find the body.
Do you think she called it in?
Oh, I think there's a chance that happened for sure.
She could have called this in.
Or whoever this mysterious person is who may have helped her clean the garage, who knows? But I will tell you, I have a spidey sense that she either had killed before or would have continued to rack up bodies in this regard. She had an outlet.
Yeah.
I'm going to find a sex offender and I'm going to kill him. And this is terrifying in the age of like Nextdoor
Yeah.
and stuff, and how easy it is to see the sex offender list. I'm a mom. I really appreciate knowing where the sex offenders are. I'm not going to lie to you. I have used.
Right. Same. Oh, I looked it up the second I moved to our house.
Also, though, this man, one of the things Deka Simmons' mom said was, this was her child. He was 40 years old. He hadn't been in trouble since that I could find. This was not a serial offender. Like you said, not child pornography, had not offended on a child. I don't think it's appropriate, and I don't know all of the details of the relationship with a 17-year-old, but it sounds like the legal system in California had addressed that.
Right.
We cannot just go around killing people. Like, this vigilante thing is highly concerning. And if you are even a Dexter type makeup where you're trying to channel that in a healthy way,
Yeah.
that's bullshit when it comes to this chick anyway, because she did a whole bunch of stuff that was not that too.
No, it honestly sounds like she watched Dexter and was like, oh, I'm going to figure that out.
That sounds kind of cool.
Yeah. Like I could kill people and they're bad people. So at least I'm doing I'm doing God's work. I'm doing everyone a favor a little bit.
Yes. So that's all I've got for you. But woo, I'm like warm. Like we talked this one out.
I know it's a big case. Well, it's interesting. We can maybe take this out if we need to.
We usually leave in everything you say when you say that, but
oh God,
go for it.
Well, when we were talking to those detectives at the conference that we spoke at in October, I was thinking this woman like did more and like went on a literal killing spree of all of the.
I thought that too.
And so like, I'm not disappointed in the case at all, but I'm also like, oh.
I have a theory though, because one of the things one of them said was, we believe there are other victims.
Right.
And then I started thinking about, what's her bucket? You know, the serial killer, Eileen something Monster. Remember the movie Monster with, who's that actress? I can't do names.
It's okay.
The South African one, Charlize Theron.
Okay.
Yeah, she played her, right? And she was a prostitute who killed a bunch of men.
Right.
This was what I thought of when I first heard of this case. And so one of the things the detectives told us is they really believe there are other victims. They just haven't been found yet. So I do actually think, and most people, I mean, to dismember and put in a bag, I mean, she just had like, she had a bit of a plan. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a great plan. She left behind DNA and she's
Mm-hmm.
highly traceable, but I think she's killed before and would have probably killed in the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks for the case.
January, I know, right? January has turned into the month of female killers, it sounds like.
Here we go. I'll look some up.
I know. Well, I
Oh,
have a whole nother one. I have another one coming up too.
perfect. There we go.
There you go. We didn't know we were going to start the year with female.
It was our first episode ever was a female offender, and we're starting the year off with female offenders. That's great.
Absolutely. You know, we got to keep it balanced.
Yes, we can't talk about men all the time.
Well, and we have guys who tell us all the time, it's just the guys get arrested, blah, blah, blah. Female they're keeping up their end too. It's terrible.
Yeah. Yes.
But we're going to represent all of it.
Yeah. We're going to talk about all of it.
Well, thanks for hanging in there with me, Nat, and we will see y'all next week.
As always.
Bye, forensic friends. I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.